On Wednesday, it looked like we were robbed of an elite matchup between the Thunder and the Warriors when Steph Curry was sitting out with an ankle injury. In addition, the Thunder had just gotten their center Isaiah Hartenstein back and subsequently dominated the Kings by holding De'Aaron Fox to just 15 points. On the other hand, the Warriors were coming off two very poor losses where they had blown double-digit leads to the Spurs and Nets in consecutive games. So now with no Curry, Steve Kerr had to really get in his bag if the Warriors would have any chance of winning this game, especially on the defensive end. The game started out as expected. The Warriors' initial game plan was to ice and blitz Shea so that he couldn't get to the middle. Seeing that, J-Dub cuts to the middle, and even with a bad pass, the Thunder flow into a dribble handoff with Isaiah Joe for 3. Next time down, Shea, who's anticipating the blitz, gets rid of the ball early. The Thunder then transition to another dribble handoff with J-Dub this time, and he stakes the screen into an elbow jumper. J-Dub was even better on the defensive end. Without a true ball handler, the Warriors literally couldn't dribble against him. The Warriors try Brandon Podziemski, but J-Dub forces him right and then just takes his lunch money. After an OKC score, Wiggins tries taking the ball up, but J-Dub strips him as he crosses to his right, and that's 3 straight turnovers for Golden State. Now, of course, without Curry, it was expected that the Warriors would have a much harder time on the offensive end. But the main issue early on was that Oklahoma City, especially Shea, was getting into the paint way too easily. To prevent multiple defenders from getting on him, Shea simply decided to ISO his matchup. And because OKC has a lot of shooters, that makes the help defenders think twice about clogging his driving lane, which gives him a lot of space to work with. And this carried over to the rest of the team. Each ball handler took turns going hard into the paint, and notice how easily they're driving by their matchups. Remember, not only does OKC have a talent advantage, they also have an athletic advantage, which was clear from the fact that the Warriors could not keep them in front. So now needing to really play the drive, this opened up Shea's patented mid-range game as he steps back and pulls over Buddy Hield. The Warriors then try putting the more athletic Kuminga, but after a screen and a sidestep over Draymond, the Thunder had a 19-point lead early in the second. Shea hit 50 points at this point, and it looked like the game was done early on. But if there's any advantage that the Warriors have on OKC, it's the fact that they've pretty much seen everything. So while their initial game plan and execution was poor, Steve Kerr made the right adjustments to really stifle this attack. Because the Warriors couldn't keep Shea in front, they decided to bring help defense early and often. Even with 2 guys trapped on Shea, they had a help defender come to the big man to make his life difficult. On the drives, notice how early and aggressive the help comes, which now forces OKC to make more quick decisions. Now, more help defense does mean the Warriors have to scramble more often, but it forces the Thunder to think fast, which then creates opportunities for mistakes. While OKC has a ton of talent and a great head coach, the one concern for this team is that their offense is really simple. They primarily rely on the ISO game of Shea and J-Dub to create opportunities for everyone else. And while they're very good at it, seeing the same offense throughout a whole game gives the Warriors enough time to make the proper adjustments, even if it means taking some risks. That risk was helping off of Lou Dort. At first glance, it doesn't sound like it makes sense because he's a 39% three-point shooter on pretty solid volume. But if we're deciding between a 3-point shot and a layup, that decision becomes a lot simpler, especially when you consider this. Lou Dort's windup into his shot is much slower than the average NBA player. So when you have athletic guys with long wingspans like Wiggins and Kuminga, they still can do enough to bother his shot. And the impact from these adjustments were twofold. OKC had a much harder time creating good looks, which allowed the Warriors to finally see less set defenses as Kuminga is able to punch it home. Then to end the quarter, Kuminga does a great job denying the pass and gets the steal before taking off and laying it in, and all of a sudden the Warriors had life. That's when they also figured out their half-court offense. The Warriors went away from their traditional movement offense and decided to just attack Shea. He has a hard time fighting over the screen, which gives Kuminga a lane to the rim for the and one. Next possession, he ISOs Shea, and while he misses, it opens up an offensive rebound chance and a 3 for Lindy Waters. Meanwhile, OKC did not have an answer on the offensive end against the Warriors' suddenly swarming defense. They continued to let Shea ISO, but as Shea drives, Wiggins and Green all come over to swarm him at the rim. That allows the Warriors to go on the break, and Podziemski is able to drive baseline before hitting Hartenstein with the D-cell and the and-1 to cut the lead down to 7. So OKC tries countering by letting Dort handle the ball, but Steve Kerr told the Warriors in the timeout to press up. That slows OKC's offense down, especially when the Warriors flow that press into a 2-3 zone. For an OKC team relying on Shai's ISOs, forcing consistent ball movement was enough to slow them down. Next time down, the Warriors then go back to man, which allows Shai to ISO again, but they smartly force Shai right because that allows him to help off Kenrich Williams, who's a 26% three-point shooter. So the Warriors' game plan targeted around Shai worked both ways as they outscored the Thunder by 11 in the third, punctuated by Pat Spencer faking a dribble handoff and driving around him to make it a 1-point game going into the fourth. And that's when we start to see more cracks in OKC's defense. As the Warriors gain momentum, they turn back to one of their most relied upon actions, the splits. With Buddy Hield in the game, the Thunder overcommit to him, which allows Spencer to dive, and now we're starting to see the ball movement that made the Warriors so great. Next time down, they run it again, and the Thunder do switch this right, but Anderson smartly pins Wallace behind him, which opens up the driving lane for the traditional 3-point play. Then on the next possession, the Warriors run a more traditional off-ball screen for Buddy, and he knocks down the 3. And at this point, it really looked like the Warriors had this figured out. Except, this is when OKC turned to their big free agency splash, Isaiah Hartenstein. To open up more space, they have Shai use the off-ball screen into an empty side pick and roll. Draymond then has to come up, which opens up the dunk. Then on the ISO, Shai knows that Draymond's coming up, so Hartenstein waits out the dunker spot and he floats it home. But for most of the fourth, the Thunder still felt that finding the right matchup for Shai was their best bet. However, as Shai continued to drive in the paint, he continued to see multiple bodies in there, which made it almost impossible to get any clean look. So as a result, he resorted to finding the guy he wanted in hopes of just simply shooting right over them. And while Shai isn't a bad three-point shooter, that's certainly not his game, and it really showed. With Shai selling more often, the Warriors knew they could press up, and it works as Shai shot 1 for 5 on these pull-ups after this miss. But the Thunder found their opportunity when Kuminga blew the layup and Looney failed to tip the ball in twice. With the Warriors trying to match up, OKC runs pick and roll at Shai, and he's able to match up with Kevon Looney. He's a little slower than everyone else, so Shai's able to create more space on the step back, and he ties the game at 96. Now, for most of the night, the Warriors' best offense was attacking Shai off the dribble, but as we detailed in the Thunder video, Shai can defend especially when he needs to. With the Thunder up 1, Wiggins tries attacking Shai, but he anticipates the spin and is able to strip him. Then on the other end, Shai finds Podziemski as his matchup, and he tweens into the sidestep 3 to push the lead up to 4. On the other end, it's Kuminga's turn to attack Shai, and he's able to get down the lane, but Hartenstein comes over, which forces Draymond to take an open 3. After a Thunder miss, the Warriors pivot to having Buddy Hield attack Hartenstein. He isn't able to find any space and goes nowhere, so the ball eventually skips to Kuminga. Shai's able to hold his own against him, and his fadeaway is short. Which takes us to the last 20 seconds of the game. The game appeared to be done, but Hartenstein had missed the first, which opened up the door for some potential chaos. And with the lead just at 4, Pat Spencer races down the floor, and the ball eventually finds Andrew Wiggins, and he knocks down the 3 to cut the lead to 1. The Warriors then put Shai on the line, and he misses the first free throw, which now opens up all options for Steve Kerr. He does make the second to push the lead up to 2, which takes us to the final play. Now it appears that this play was designed for Draymond to dive to the rim, but with Podziemski falling, the play is blown up. The ball eventually does find Draymond, and he throws a beautiful pass for Wiggins at the rim, but he rushes it, and the Thunder are able to escape with a win on the road. Yes, the Warriors did not win this game, but it was clear that despite a huge talent gap, the Warriors' scheme and experience played a huge part in keeping this game close. Now, I'm not saying that this game is any indicator of what might happen down the line, especially with Steph and Chet out, and Jada who left after the second quarter. But I do think there's a few weaknesses from this game that got magnified by both teams. Let's start with the Warriors. To me, it's clear that they desperately need a secondary ball scorer that could get his own shot, especially down the stretch. Yes, Steve Kerr's system naturally makes it so that you don't need ball dominant players to succeed, but when OKC gets guys like Caruso and Chet back, they will certainly need someone who can truly create on their own. That guy was Jordan Poole in 2022, who was a really important piece to their title, and Mike Dunleavy will need to work his magic before the trade deadline. For OKC, they have all the pieces to win a title, but if there's one weakness that was highlighted in this game, it's the simplicity of their offense. At their core, they want Shea and J-Dub to be the ball handlers and create offense with isolation. But against a team that has seen this in the Rockets and Celtics series, they have figured out how to slow this type of offense down. And that's why the Warriors without Steph were able to slow down the Thunder by making the right adjustments as the game moved on. It's only November, so this game doesn't necessarily mean much in the grand scheme, but at its core, the theme is still there. A team with by far more young and up-and-coming talent versus a team with championship DNA and elite coaching. And we'll have to see how this battle goes down when we get closer to April and May. If you would like to support this channel, feel free to visit any of these links here. Besides that, hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.